All right, so are you ready to really jump into this roadie thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. We've got 1,000 ways to hustle as our guide.
Yeah.
And wow, there's a lot in here.
Yeah, it's packed.
But we're not going to, just skim the surface, right? We're going deep.
We're going deep.
Think of it like finding those hidden gems buried in the fine print, you know?
Yeah.
We're going to unearth those strategies that really help maximize your earnings.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about the money.
Right.
What I find so interesting about Roadie is how it reflects this whole shift we're seeing towards the gig economy.
Yeah.
The flexibility is huge, especially for folks who want more control over their time,
Totally. But let's be real for a sec. There's a learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
This guide throws a lot at you.
It does.
Getting approved, using the app, different types of gigs, bidding strategies, taxes, insurance,
Yeah, where do we even begin?
Seriously, where do we even begin?
Well, actually, there's a great story in the guide about this guy named Mark.
Okay.
He was working this dead-end job, barely making ends meet.
Ooh, I've been there.
Right, and he started doing Roadie just on the side,
Okay.
just a few gigs a week.
Yeah.
Fast forward 2 years, he quits his job. He's making more money. And get this, he's actually enjoying what he's doing.
Wow.
That's the kind of potential we're talking about here.
Okay, so Mark is like our inspiration then.
Yeah.
But how did he even get started? Can anyone just sign up and start hauling stuff around?
Well, not quite. There are some ground rules, but they're pretty straightforward. You got to be 18, have a valid driver's license, and of course, a vehicle that's in good shape.
Okay.
But here's the catch. Your insurance needs to cover commercial use,
Oh, right.
which most personal policies don't.
That's a really good point, something you might not think about right away.
Yeah.
So is it worth getting a commercial policy or just sticking with a rideshare endorsement?
That's where it gets interesting. It really depends on the kind of gigs you're going for.
Okay.
The guide mentions that airport runs and those long-haul deliveries tend to be higher risk,
Right.
but also higher reward. So if that's your focus, then yeah, a commercial policy might make more sense.
Okay.
But if you're mainly doing local stuff, a rideshare endorsement could be sufficient.
I see. So we're already thinking strategically.
Right.
Okay. So what else did Mark have to do to get on the road?
Well, background check, of course. Driving record criminal history, they look into it all.
Makes sense.
And then there's the Roadie quiz.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about this.
It's their way of making sure you understand the system, the rules, how to handle deliveries, all that jazz.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you pass all the year in. Now what?
Now you dive into the app.
Okay.
It's like your command center, right? Where you find and manage all your gigs.
Yeah.
The guide actually breaks down the app features pretty well.
Okay.
You've got your map view, your gig list, your gig details.
Hold on. I get that the app is important,
Yeah.
but can we maybe skip the basic tutorial?
Mm.
I'm guessing our listener already knows how to use a smartphone.
You're right.
What we need is the insider info,
Yeah.
the stuff that's not obvious.
Okay, yeah, let's jump ahead.
Okay.
The real question is, how do you use the app to find the best gigs?
Right.
The guide calls it working smarter, not harder.
Okay, now you're talking. So what are some of those work smarter strategies?
Yeah, one tip is to really master those filters.
Filters?
Most people just look at location and payout,
Right.
but you can filter by vehicle type, item size, even specific delivery time windows.
Oh, wow.
That lets you zero in on gigs that are perfect for you.
So you're not wasting time scrolling through tons of gigs that aren't even relevant.
Exactly. Another thing the guide emphasizes is understanding the different types of gigs.
Okay.
Local deliveries are great for beginners,
Yeah.
but they're usually lower paying.
Makes sense.
Long-haul gigs can be way more lucrative,
Okay.
but they require more planning.
Yeah. What about those airport gigs? They seem kind of high pressure, but I bet they pay well.
They can, especially during peak travel times.
Right.
But you're right, there's more to it than just grabbing any gig that pops up. The guide recommends researching airport procedures parking,
Right.
knowing which terminals are busiest at different times, even factoring in traffic patterns.
Wow. So even with something like airport gigs, there's a whole strategy involved.
Oh, absolutely. And same goes for oversized deliveries.
Okay.
It's not just about having a truck.
Right.
You need to know how to properly secure those items.
Okay.
Maybe even have some basic moving equipment like dollies or straps.
So we're getting a sense of the gig landscape, but how do you actually snag these gigs? Is it a free-for-all?
There's a system, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Roadie uses both a bid system and an offer system.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
Okay, so think of bid like an auction.
Okay.
You see a gig, you propose a price.
Yeah.
And the sender chooses the driver based on a few things, like the price you're rating, how close you are.
So you got to be competitive, but you also got to make sure you're actually making a profit.
Exactly. Now, offer gigs, those are more straightforward. Roadie sets a fixed price, and it's first come, first served.
Gotcha.
Those can be great for quick wins, especially when you're starting out.
I see. So there's a bit of a balancing act?
Yeah.
You can try to snipe those high-paying bids.
Right.
Or you can just focus on grabbing those quick offer gigs.
Exactly. And here's a tip from the guide I found really interesting then. Don't get too caught up in that immediate payout.
Okay.
Think long-term.
Right.
Building a strong reputation that's crucial.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you go about building that roadie reputation?
It boils down to three things: communication reliability and professionalism.
Okay. Those seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But what do they actually look like in practice?
Well, communication, it's more than just confirming those pickup and delivery times.
Okay.
It's about being proactive, keeping the sender updated, letting them know if there are any delays,
Right.
answering their questions promptly.
So it's almost like you're running your own little delivery business.
In a way, yeah. And reliability that goes hand in hand with that. Being on time for pickups, meeting those deadlines, handling those packages with care.
Basically, don't be flaky.
Exactly. And then professionalism kind of ties it all together, being courteous, dressing appropriately, representing Roadie well. It all adds up.
So you're building trust with the sender.
Right.
Which hopefully leads to more gigs,
Yep.
better ratings,
Yeah.
and ultimately more earnings.
Precisely. It's a cycle. The more you invest in your reputation, the more you'll get out of it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the basics here, getting started, the app, the types of gigs, the importance of reputation, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually doing a gig. What should drivers keep in mind once they've accepted that delivery?
That's where the guide's advice really shines.
Okay.
It's not just driving from point A to point B. There's a process, and mastering it can really make or break your success.
Okay, walk us through it. What are those key steps involved in actually doing a roadie gig?
Okay, let's break it down. First, always double-check those details before you head out. Pickup address, time window, item description, any special instructions.
So you're not showing up at the wrong place or finding out you need a forklift at the last minute.
Exactly. And when you're getting close to the pickup, use the app's On My Way feature.
Okay.
Or just shoot the sender a quick text letting them know you're almost there.
It's all about setting expectations and keeping everyone in the loop.
Right. Once you arrive, load that item carefully, secure it properly.
Yeah.
And then this is crucial, keep the communication going throughout the whole trip.
Okay.
Provide updates, especially if there are any unexpected delays.
So communication is your best friend?
Absolutely no radio silence.
Yeah.
When you reach the delivery location, follow those same steps.
Okay.
Notify the recipient, carefully unload the item, and get proof of delivery.
Proof of delivery.
Whether it's a photo or a signature, it protects both you and the sender.
Okay, so it's all about being prepared,
Right.
being proactive,
Yep.
and being communicative.
It's a good recipe for life in general.
I like that.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the thing everyone really wants to know.
Yeah. The money.
Yeah.
How do you maximize your earnings on Roadie? We're not just doing this for fun, are we?
Right, we're here to hustle.
Yeah.
And this is where 1,000 Ways to Hustle really gets strategic.
Okay, I'm all ears. Spill the secrets.
Okay, one of the most important things is to know your costs. And I'm not just talking about gas. We're talking tolls, vehicle wear and tear, your time, everything.
Right.
You need to factor all of that in when you're setting your bids.
Otherwise, you could end up actually losing money on a gig.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about calculating your expenses. You've also got to research the market.
Yeah.
See what other drivers are bidding.
Okay.
Experiment with different strategies. Adjust your approach as needed.
So it's kind of like playing the stock market. You've got to be able to read the trends.
It is a dynamic landscape. You got to stay adaptable.
So we're being strategic.
Yeah.
We're researching the market. We're being patient. What else can we do to boost those earnings?
This might sound obvious, but the guide really hammers it home.
Yeah.
Value your time.
Decide what your desired hourly rate is and don't accept gigs that fall below that threshold.
Don't undersell yourself.
Exactly. Your time and skills are worth something.
Right.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. The guide talks about a concept called specialization.
Oh, tell me more about that.
It's basically finding your niche.
Okay.
Instead of being a generalist, you become the go-to driver for a specific type of gig.
So like instead of delivering anything, you become the furniture guy or the airport queen or whatever.
Exactly. It allows you to build expertise, potentially charge higher rates, and really streamline your operations.
Sounds like a smart move.
It is.
But let's not forget about the less glamorous but equally important aspects of gig work.
Oh, yeah.
Insurance and taxes.
Ah, yes, the joys of being an independent contractor.
Right.
But seriously, these are crucial things to consider. As we mentioned before, your personal auto insurance likely won't cover commercial use of your vehicle.
So you'll need to look into options like a rideshare endorsement or even a commercial policy.
Exactly. And then there are taxes.
Ugh, taxes.
You've got to track your income and expenses, meticulously make those quarterly estimated tax payments,
Right.
and potentially even pay self-employment tax.
That sounds overwhelming.
It can be, but trust me, there are resources out there to help you navigate all of this.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Getting started, the app, the different types of gigs,
Yeah.
the importance of reputation, maximizing your earnings,
Right.
even those essential but sometimes confusing topics of insurance and taxes.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to know before we hit the road?
Well, beyond the practicalities, I think it's important to remember that gig work, especially something like Roadie, is about more than just moving packages from point A to point B.
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
It's about connecting people,
Yeah,
facilitating commerce, being part of something bigger.
I can see that. You're helping people often in their time of need. Delivering a crucial package, transporting a forgotten item, reuniting a traveler with their lost luggage.
Absolutely.
You're making a difference in their lives?
Exactly. It's about human connection reliability, that sense of accomplishment from a job well done.
Okay, so we've talked about the practicalities, the strategies, and even the feel-good aspects of being a roadie driver.
Yeah.
But let's get real for a second. This gig isn't without its challenges, right? What are some things potential drivers should be prepared for?
Well, for starters, you're essentially your own boss,
Yeah.
which means you're responsible for everything. Finding gigs, managing your schedule, handling customer interactions, tracking expenses, dealing with unexpected situations.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It requires a certain level of self-discipline and organization.
So it's not for everyone.
Right. You got to be comfortable with that level of autonomy.
And then there's the unpredictability of gig work.
Oh, yeah.
You might have days where gigs are plentiful and others where they're scarce.
Absolutely.
Your income can fluctuate, and that can be stressful for some people.
It can, especially if you're relying on Roadie as your primary source of income.
So you got to be adaptable, resourceful, and maybe have a backup plan in case things get slow.
Exactly. And then there's the physical aspect of the job.
Right, you're not sitting at a desk all day.
You're going to be doing a lot of lifting, carrying, moving potentially in all kinds of weather conditions.
Okay, those stairs.
Oh, the stairs. And sometimes you'll be dealing with bulky or awkward items that require extra care and effort.
So it's not a job for the faint of heart.
Yeah,
You got to be physically fit and prepared for some heavy lifting.
absolutely. And don't underestimate the importance of good shoes.
Oh, good point. You're going to be spending a lot of time on your feet.
And let's not forget about the mental and emotional aspects of the job.
Oh, right.
You're interacting with a lot of different people, some of whom might be stressed, impatient, or even rude.
So customer service skills are a must.
Definitely. You got to be able to handle those situations with grace and professionalism.
Thick skin and a good dose of patience are essential.
Absolutely. And you need to be comfortable being on the road, often for extended periods.
So if you get restless or bored easily, this might not be the best gig.
That's right. You need to enjoy driving and find ways to stay entertained and engaged while you're out there.
Podcasts, audiobooks, maybe even some sing-alongs.
Whatever works. The important thing is to find what makes those long drives enjoyable.
Okay, so we've talked about the responsibilities, the unpredictability, the physical demands, and even the mental and emotional challenges of being a roadie driver.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider.
It is, but despite all that, there's still something undeniably appealing about this gig, isn't there?
Absolutely. There's a certain sense of freedom and flexibility that comes with being your own boss.
Yeah, you get to set your own hours, choose your gigs, and be out on the open road.
Exactly. And there's a real sense of satisfaction that comes from successfully completing a delivery and knowing that you've helped someone.
It's like being a modern-day courier,
Right.
connecting people and places.
Precisely. And let's not forget the potential for adventure. You never know where a roadie gig might take you.
Who knows? You might even stumble upon some hidden gems along the way.
You just might. That's part of the allure of this type of work. It's unpredictable, it's challenging, but it can also be incredibly rewarding.
So for those who are up for the challenge and embrace the freedom and flexibility,
Yeah,
Roadie could be a fantastic opportunity.
absolutely. It's a chance to earn money on your own terms, explore new places, and make a difference in people's lives.
Now let's dive into something super important, safety.
Okay.
What should drivers keep in mind to stay safe, especially when they're out there dealing with strangers and potentially tricky situations?
You hit the nail on the head. Safety is paramount, especially in this line of work. First and foremost, situational awareness is key.
Okay.
Being aware of your surroundings, trusting your gut if something feels off.
So if a pickup location seems sketchy or a sender is giving you bad vibes, don't hesitate to nope out of there.
Exactly. Your safety comes first.
Right.
It's also smart to keep valuables out of sight and maybe share your location with a trusted friend or family member while you're working.
So kind of the virtual buddy system?
Yeah, exactly. What about Roadie itself? Do they have any safety protocols in place?
That's a good question.
They do. They have a whole section in the app dedicated to safety guidelines, emergency procedures, even a feature to report any suspicious activity.
That's good to know. It's reassuring that they're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
But ultimately, a lot of it comes down to personal responsibility, right?
Right. Being proactive, being prepared, knowing how to handle different situations.
Okay, so we've covered being aware of our surroundings, but what about the physical stuff? Lifting heavy items can be risky. Any tips for avoiding injuries?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Lifting injuries are common in this line of work. The guide really stresses using proper lifting techniques.
Okay.
Bend at the knees. Keep your back straight lift with your legs, not your back.
Yeah.
And don't be a hero. If something's too heavy, just ask for help.
2 heads and backs are better than 1.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of tools, dollies, hand trucks, straps.
Right.
Those things can make a huge difference in terms of safety and efficiency.
Those are your friends. Okay, so we've talked about lifting, but what about just general vehicle safety?
That's crucial too. The guide recommends regular vehicle maintenance.
Makes sense.
Check your tire pressure, brakes, lights, fluid levels, everything.
Okay.
And always have an emergency kit in your vehicle just in case.
Better safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And while you're on the road, practice defensive driving.
Right.
Be aware of your surroundings and always follow traffic laws.
Of course.
If you're feeling tired or drowsy, pull over and take a break. It's not worth risking your safety or the safety of others.
Good point. Drowsy driving is just as dangerous as drunk driving.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground on safety, both personal and vehicle related.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about Roadie having specific safety guidelines and procedures.
Oh, right.
What are some examples of those, and how can drivers access that info?
Roadie takes safety seriously, and they've got a ton of resources available. There's a whole section on their website and in the app that covers everything from vehicle maintenance to personal safety tips to what to do in an emergency.
So it's like a safety handbook for Roadie drivers.
Exactly. And they have safety features built into the app. Like you can report suspicious activity or even request emergency assistance right from your phone.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
It's good to see they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk.
Right. And they encourage drivers to report any safety concerns they have so they can constantly improve their protocols.
It's a collaborative effort.
It is.
Roadie is committed to driver safety, but drivers also have a responsibility to take their own safety seriously and follow the guidelines.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
Now let's talk about staying informed and adapting to this ever-changing landscape of the gig economy. Things are always changing,
Always.
and Roadie is no exception. What are some ways that drivers can stay ahead of the curve and make sure they're maximizing their earning potential?
You're right. The gig economy is constantly evolving. To stay ahead as a Roadie driver, you got to stay informed about changes to the platform,
Okay.
industry trends, even local market conditions.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of gig.
Definitely not. You got to stay engaged and be willing to adapt.
Okay, so how do we do that?
One simple thing is to regularly check Roadie's blog, their social media channels, their emails for updates and announcements.
Those are your direct line to the latest news and happenings.
Precisely. And pay attention to those in-app notifications.
Okay.
They can alert you to new features, policy changes, even surge pricing opportunities.
Ooh, surge pricing. That sounds like a chance to boost your earnings.
It can be. But staying informed goes beyond just Roadie's own communications. You should also keep an eye on broader industry trends.
So like what's happening in the gig economy as a whole?
Exactly. Read articles, listen to podcasts, join online forums or communities for gig workers.
Get the inside scoop, see what other drivers are experiencing, learn from their successes and challenges.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of networking.
Network.
Connect with other roadie drivers in your area.
Okay.
Share tips and strategies, learn from each other's experiences.
It's like a support system for roadie drivers.
Exactly. And it can also help you stay informed about local market conditions, like areas with high demand or specific types of gigs that are particularly lucrative in your region.
Local knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And finally, don't be afraid to experiment. The gig economy is all about adaptability and finding what works best for you.
Okay.
So test out different strategies, adjust your approach as needed, and always be willing to learn and grow.
Embrace the ever-changing nature of the gig economy.
Exactly.
It's all about being a lifelong learner.
Precisely. And that's what makes it so exciting. There's always something new to discover, new ways to improve your skills, maximize your earnings.
Okay, so we've talked about staying informed.
Yeah.
But let's dive into a specific strategy that a lot of gig workers use to maximize their earning potential.
Okay.
Multi-apping.
Okay.
Can you explain what that is and how it applies to Roadie?
Absolutely. Multi-apping is basically using multiple gig platforms at the same time to increase your chances of getting gigs and making more money.
So it's like juggling multiple gigs at once.
Exactly. And while it can be a great way to boost your income, you got to approach it strategically and be aware of the potential challenges.
It sounds like it get pretty complicated.
It can be. You need to be organized, efficient with your time, and really good at managing multiple apps and tasks simultaneously.
So how does multi-apping work specifically with Roadie?
Well, Roadie's a bit different from other platforms because their gigs often have specific pickup and delivery time windows.
So you can't just turn on the app and wait for pings like you can with ride sharing or food delivery.
Right. With Roadie, you usually need to commit to a gig in advance, which can make it tricky to juggle multiple platforms at the same time.
So you need to be extra careful about scheduling.
Yes.
And making sure the gigs you accept on different platforms don't overlap or conflict.
Precisely. And you also need to be mindful of the cancellation policies for each platform.
Right.
Canceling gigs after you've accepted them can negatively impact your ratings and could even lead to account deactivation.
It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy.
That's a good way to put it. It's definitely not for everyone. It requires a certain personality type, a high level of organization, and a willingness to take on that added complexity.
So before you jump into the multi-apping frenzy,
Right.
weigh the pros and cons and make sure it aligns with your personality and your work style.
Absolutely. And if you do decide to multi-app, start slowly.
Okay.
Experiment with different combinations of platforms and find a system that works for you.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about a topic that no one likes to think about, but is nonetheless crucial. Cancellations.
Oh, yeah.
What happens if you need to cancel a gig, either as a driver or if the sender cancels on you?
Cancellations are just part of the gig economy landscape, but it's important to understand each platform's policies and handle them professionally to minimize any negative impact.
Okay, so let's start with driver cancellations. What happens if you need to cancel a gig after you've already accepted it?
Well, the good news is you can decline any gig offer before you accept it without any penalty.
Okay, so no pressure to take on gigs that don't work for you.
Exactly. But once you accept a gig, things get a little trickier.
Okay.
Canceling after you've accepted can hurt your rating and may even lead to penalties, depending on the platform's policies.
So it's not something to take lightly?
Definitely not. Most platforms track your cancellation rate, and if it gets too high, you could face consequences like account suspension or even deactivation.
Yikes. So what are some valid reasons for canceling a gig, and how can drivers avoid getting penalized?
Legitimate emergencies like a sudden illness, a family emergency, car trouble, those are usually considered valid reasons.
Okay.
But you need to communicate with the platform ASAP.
So don't just ghost them.
Right. Be upfront, explain the situation. And if you know in advance that you won't be able to do a gig, try to cancel as early as possible to give the platform and the sender time to find a replacement.
It's all about being respectful of everyone's time and minimizing disruption.
Now let's flip the script and talk about sender cancellations. What happens if the sender cancels a gig after you've already accepted it?
That's got to be frustrating, especially if you've already rearranged your schedule or are en route to the pickup location.
It can be, but the good news is that most platforms have policies to protect drivers in those situations.
So you're not just left high and dry.
Exactly. Roadie, for example, might offer partial compensation to drivers if a sender cancels after the gig's been accepted.
That's good to know. It's important to familiarize yourself with Roadie's cancellation policy.
Yeah,
So you know your rights and what to expect in these situations.
absolutely. And the same goes for any other gig platform you use. Read those terms and conditions, folks.
Knowledge is power.
Now let's switch gears and talk about taxes.
Oh, boy.
We touched on this briefly earlier,
We did it.
but it deserves a deeper dive.
Okay.
Can you break down the tax implications of being a roadie driver? And what steps drivers need to take to make sure they're doing everything by the book?
Tax is the word that strikes fear into the hearts of many.
Right.
But it's a necessary evil, especially for independent contractors like roadie drivers.
You're telling me. And unfortunately, it's not always the most straightforward topic.
Right.
But don't worry, with a little knowledge and planning, you can navigate this maze with confidence.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, understand that as a roadie driver, you're considered an independent contractor, not an employee.
And that's a big deal because it affects how you handle taxes.
Exactly. As an independent contractor, you're essentially self-employed, which means you're responsible for paying your own taxes.
So no one's withholding taxes from your paycheck. It's all on you.
That's why it's so important to keep meticulous records of all your income and expenses throughout the year.
Good, let's break that down.
What exactly does keeping records entail?
It means tracking every dollar you earn from roadie gig payments, tips, bonuses, everything.
Got it.
And on the flip side, track all your business expenses.
Like gas tolls, vehicle maintenance. Exactly. But it's more than just the obvious stuff. You can also deduct things like the portion of your phone bill that's used for business, any supplies you buy for work, even the depreciation on your vehicle.
So every little bit counts.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure hunt for deductions.
Precisely. And the more deductions you can claim, the lower your taxable income will be.
That's the goal, right? Minimize those taxes.
Absolutely. Now, here's where it gets a little trickier. As an independent contractor, you're generally required to make quarterly estimated tax payments to the IRS.
Quarterly.
That sounds like a pain. It can be, but it's important to stay on top of it to avoid penalties. The IRS has a Form 1040-ES that you can use to calculate and pay your estimated taxes.
Okay, so track income and expenses, make quarterly payments. Anything else?
Ah, yes, the dreaded self-employment tax. This is basically Social Security and Medicare tax for independent contractors.
So on top of regular income tax, you have to pay this extra tax.
Unfortunately, yes. But there is a silver lining. You can deduct half of your self-employment tax from your gross income.
Every little bit helps. This all sounds pretty complicated. Is it worth getting professional help for all this tax stuff?
If you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure about any aspect of your tax obligations, it's always a good idea to talk to a tax professional.
They're the experts. They can help make sure you're doing everything correctly and potentially even save you money.
Exactly. They can also help you identify deductions you might have missed and keep you updated on any changes in tax laws that could affect you.
So consider it an investment in your financial well-being.
Precisely. Now let's move on to another important topic, insurance. We touched on this earlier.
Yeah, we did.
But I think it warrants a more in-depth discussion.
Okay.
What are the key insurance considerations for roadie drivers,
Yeah.
and what steps should they take to protect themselves?
Insurance. It's one of those things you hope you never need,
Right.
but it's absolutely essential to have just in case.
You're right. And in the world of gig work, where you're using your personal vehicle for commercial purposes, it's even more important.
Because your personal auto insurance policy probably won't cut it.
Exactly. Most personal policies have exclusions for commercial use. So if you get into an accident while you're on a roadie gig, you could be personally liable for any damages.
That's a scary thought. So what are the options for roadie drivers who want to make sure they're covered?
Well, there are a couple of main options. One is to add a rideshare or delivery endorsement to your existing personal auto policy.
So it's like an add-on that extends your coverage to include gig work?
Precisely. But it's important to note that these endorsements can vary a lot from one insurance company to another, so you really got to read the fine print and make sure you understand what's covered and what isn't.
Shop around, compare policies, make sure you're getting what you need.
Exactly. The other option, which provides more comprehensive coverage, is to purchase a commercial auto insurance policy.
So that's specifically designed for business use of your vehicle.
Precisely. It'll cover you for that entire delivery process from pickup to drop-off.
That's peace of mind, but
I'm guessing it comes with a higher price tag?
it does. But it offers greater protection, so it could be a worthwhile investment, especially if you're doing a lot of roadie gigs.
Absolutely. It's all about weighing those costs and benefits and choosing the option that best fits your needs and your budget.
Right. And hey, don't forget, roadie itself actually provides some liability insurance coverage to its drivers
Oh, that's right.
while they're actively on a gig.
Yeah, so there's that added layer of protection.
Exactly. It's good
Yeah.
to know they've got your back, but it's important to understand the specifics of that coverage, right?
Oh, definitely.
It might not cover everything, so it's still essential to have your own insurance in place.
Absolutely. Don't rely solely on roadie's insurance. Make sure you've got your own bases covered.
Yeah, good advice. And speaking of coverage, there's another type of insurance that roadie drivers might want to consider.
Okay.
Cargo insurance.
Cargo insurance.
What's that all about?
Cargo insurance protects the goods you're transporting from loss or damage. So if you're handling a particularly valuable or fragile item,
So if you're holding a big screen TV or something and it gets damaged in transit, cargo insurance could save the day.
exactly. Roadie does offer some basic cargo coverage, but it might not be enough for every situation. The guide recommends checking the details and maybe even getting additional coverage if you often transport high-value items.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm realizing that there's a lot more strategy to this whole roadie thing than I initially thought. It's
Yeah,
not just driving around. It's like running a mini business.
that's a great way to put it. And speaking of running a business, there's another aspect the guide highlights that I think is really smart, building relationships with senders.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do you go about building those relationships, especially in a gig setting where everything's so transactional?
It's actually simpler than you might think. A lot of it comes down to basic professionalism and courtesy.
Okay.
Be punctual, communicate, clearly handle their items with care. Those things go a long way.
So it's the little things that make a difference.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to go the extra mile. If you can help a sender load a heavy item or offer to place the package in a specific spot, it shows you care.
It's about exceeding expectations. Kind of like those amazing customer service experiences you remember where they just go above and beyond.
Exactly. And another key part of building relationships is communication. Respond to messages promptly, keep senders updated on your ETA, and be transparent about any delays or issues.
So no surprises, basically.
Right. People appreciate honesty and knowing what to expect. And, little things like remembering details from past gigs or addressing senders by name
Okay.
can make them feel valued.
It's like personalized service, even in the gig economy.
Aye.
We talked earlier about specialization.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some examples of areas where roadie drivers could specialize?
That's where you can get really creative. It all depends on your interests, your vehicle type, and the demand in your area. For example, if you have a truck and you enjoy moving big stuff, you could specialize in oversized deliveries.
Okay, like furniture, appliances, maybe even those giant inflatable holiday decorations.
Exactly. Or if you're near an airport, you could focus on airport runs. Those are often time sensitive and can pay well, but you need to be organized and efficient.
That makes sense. What about something like medical deliveries? I imagine there's a demand for that.
You're right. Prescription deliveries are a niche area, but it's one that requires extra care and attention to detail.
So if you're someone who's super organized and reliable, that could be a good fit.
Exactly. There are all sorts of possibilities when it comes to specialization. It's about finding what you're good at and what you enjoy.
It's about carving out your own little corner of the roadie world. I love it.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the practicalities of being a roadie driver, the strategies, the tips,
Yeah.
all of that. But I want to step back for a moment and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
The gig economy is often praised for its flexibility and earning potential,
Right.
but it also has its critics. What are some of the broader societal implications of this shift towards gig work, and where does roadie fit into that landscape?
That's a great question and one that sparks a lot of debate. The gig economy is complex, and its impact on society is multifaceted. On the one hand, it's undeniable that it's created new opportunities for people to earn income in ways that weren't possible before.
It's given people more control over their time, their work, their income.
Exactly. And for many people, it's been a lifeline, especially during times of economic uncertainty.
It's a safety net for those who might not fit into traditional employment models.
Absolutely. But the gig economy isn't without its downsides. There are concerns about the lack of benefits like health insurance and paid time off that typically come with traditional jobs.
So it's a trade-off. You gain flexibility, but you lose some security.
Right. And there are also questions about whether some gig platforms are exploiting workers by misclassifying them as independent contractors to avoid paying benefits and minimum wage.
It's a legal and ethical gray area that's still being sorted out.
It is. And it's an important conversation to have as the gig economy continues to grow.
So where does roadie fit into all of this?
I think Roadie, while participating in the gig economy, does have some key differences from platforms like ride-sharing or food delivery. For one, Roadie focuses on pre-scheduled deliveries, often with specific time windows.
So it's not just about being on call 24/7 waiting for a ping.
Exactly. And roadie digs often involve longer distances and higher value items, which typically means higher payouts per gig.
It's not just about those quick, low-paying deliveries.
Right. And I think it's also worth noting that Roadie has made efforts to address some of the concerns around worker classification and benefits. They offer supplemental accident insurance to their drivers, and they've publicly supported legislation that would give gig workers more protections.
So they're acknowledging the need for a more equitable and sustainable model for the gig economy.
Exactly. They're not perfect, but they seem to be trying to do the right thing.
And that's what we want to see, a gig economy that works for everyone involved. We've talked a lot about the practical side of things, but I think it's also important to address the emotional and mental well-being of gig workers.
Oh,
What are some of the unique challenges that people in this line of work face, and how can they take care of themselves?
that's a really important point. The gig economy can be rewarding, but it definitely comes with its own set of stressors. One of the biggest is the unpredictability. Income can fluctuate, gigs can be scarce, and that can create a lot of anxiety.
It's that feast or famine cycle that can be really tough to manage emotionally.
Right. And there's also the isolation that many gig workers experience. You're often working alone without the social interaction and support you'd get in a traditional office setting.
You can get lonely out there on the road.
It can. And then there's the pressure to always be on, always be hustling for the next gig. It can be hard to switch off and recharge.
It's like the work never really ends.
Exactly. And all of those factors can contribute to stress, anxiety, burnout, even depression. So it's crucial for gig workers to be proactive about their mental and emotional health.
So what can gig workers do to take care of themselves?
One of the most important things is to set boundaries. Create a clear separation between work and personal life.
Easier said than done when your office is your car.
True, but it's crucial to carve out time for yourself, time where you're not thinking about gigs, not checking the app, just relaxing and recharging.
Unplugging and disconnecting is so important.
Absolutely. Another thing that can help is connecting with other gig workers, sharing experiences, offering support and advice.
It's like creating your own virtual water cooler.
Exactly. And of course, don't hesitate to seek professional help if you're struggling. There's no shame in talking to a therapist or counselor, and they can provide valuable support and guidance.
Mental health is just as important as physical health, and there are resources available to help.
And lastly, don't forget about the basics of self-care. Make time for activities you enjoy, whether it's exercise, spending time in nature, listening to music, whatever helps you relax and recharge.
Fill your cup so you can pour from it. I love that. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the practical side of being a roadie driver, the strategies for success, the importance of safety, and staying informed.
Yeah.
But we've also touched on something deeper, the impact of this work on individuals and on society as a whole.
It's been quite a journey, and I think the key takeaway is that Roadie, like any gig platform, presents both opportunities and challenges. It's not for everyone, but for those who are willing to put in the work, be adaptable, and prioritize their well-being, it can be a viable and even fulfilling way to earn a living.
It's a reflection of the changing nature of work. It's about taking ownership of your career path, embracing flexibility, and finding a way to thrive in a world that's constantly evolving.
Exactly. It's exciting to see how the gig economy continues to unfold and shape the future of work.
So as you embark on your roadie journey, remember to be prepared, be strategic, be safe, and most importantly, be kind to yourself.
And never stop learning and growing. The gig economy is dynamic, and the most successful people are those who are willing to adapt and evolve along with it.
Great advice. Now let's talk about something that might be a deal breaker for some people. It can also be a huge advantage for those who are organized and strategic.
Okay.
Taxes. We touched on this earlier.
Yeah, we did.
But I think it's worth diving a little deeper.
Okay.
Can you break down the tax implications of being a roadie driver and explain what steps drivers need to take to stay on the right side of the IRS?
Taxes are definitely something you don't want to mess around with, especially as an independent contractor. But with a little understanding and planning, it doesn't have to be a headache. So as we mentioned before, as a roadie driver, you're not considered an employee, you're an independent contractor.
And that distinction is important because it means you're responsible for handling your own taxes.
Exactly. There's no employer withholding taxes from your paycheck. You're essentially running your own little business, which means you need to keep meticulous records of your income and expenses.
The receipts, invoices, mileage logs.
Everything. You need to be able to document every dollar you earn and every dollar you spend on business-related expenses.
Because those expenses can be deducted from your income, which can lower your tax bill.
Precisely. And those deductions aren't just for the obvious stuff like gas and tolls. You can also deduct things like a portion of your cell phone bill if you use it for business office supplies, even depreciation on your vehicle.
So it's like a treasure hunt for deductions.
Yeah.
But how do you know what you can and can't deduct?
That's where a good tax professional can be worth their weight in gold. They can help you identify all the eligible deductions and make sure you're maximizing your tax savings.
It's an investment worth considering.
Now, here's the part that often trips people up. As an independent contractor, you're usually required to make quarterly estimated tax payments to the IRS.
Quarterly, that seems like a hassle.
It can be, but it's important to stay on top of it to avoid penalties. The good news is that the IRS has a Form 1040-ES, that you can use to calculate and pay your estimated taxes.
Okay, so you track your income and expenses, you make quarterly payments. What else do we need to know about the tax side of things?
Yes. There's also the self-employment tax. This is essentially a Social Security and Medicare tax for independent contractors.
So on top of regular income tax, there's this extra tax you have to pay.
Unfortunately, yes. But the good news is that you can deduct half of your self-employment tax from your gross income, which helps to offset the burden a bit.
Okay, so taxes can seem daunting, but with good record keeping, a little planning, and maybe some professional guidance, it's manageable.
Exactly. And the peace of mind that comes from knowing you're doing everything by the book is priceless.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears and talk about another crucial topic for roadie drivers: insurance. We touched on this earlier.
We did.
But I think it deserves a more in-depth discussion.
Okay.
What are the key insurance considerations for roadie drivers, and what steps should they take to protect themselves?
Insurance is one of those things you hope you never need, but it's absolutely essential to have in case something goes wrong. And in the world of gig work where you're using your personal vehicle for commercial purposes, it's even more important.
Because your personal auto insurance policy might not cover you if you get into an accident while on a roadie gig.
Exactly. Most personal policies have exclusions for commercial use. So if you're serious about doing roadie, you need to look into additional coverage options.
So what are those options?
There are a couple of main paths you can take. One is to add a rideshare or delivery endorsement to your existing personal auto insurance policy.
So it's like an add-on that extends your coverage to include gig work.
Precisely.
Hmm?
But it's important to note that these endorsements can vary quite a bit from company to company. So read the fine print and make sure you understand exactly what's covered.
Shop around, compare policies, ask questions.
Exactly. The other option, which typically provides more comprehensive coverage, is to purchase a commercial auto insurance policy.
So that's specifically designed for business use of a vehicle.
Right. It will cover you from the moment you pick up an item to the moment you drop it off and everything in between.
That sounds like peace of mind,
Sure.
but I'm guessing it's more expensive.
It does tend to be more expensive than a rideshare endorsement, but it offers greater protection. It can be a worthwhile investment, especially if you're planning to make roadie a significant part of your income.
So it's a cost-benefit analysis. You have to weigh the risks and rewards and choose the option that makes the most sense for your situation.
Exactly. And don't forget that Roadie itself provides some liability insurance coverage to its drivers while they're actively on a gig.
So there's an extra layer of protection from Roadie.
There is, but it's important to understand the limitations of that coverage. It might not cover everything, so it's still crucial to have your own insurance in place.
So don't rely solely on Roadie's coverage. Make sure
Yeah.
you've got your own bases covered.
Absolutely. And speaking of coverage, there's another type of insurance roadie drivers might want to consider. Cargo insurance. What's that all about? Cargo insurance protects the items you're transporting in case they get lost or damaged. So if you're hauling a valuable piece of furniture or a fragile electronic device, cargo insurance can help cover the cost of repairs or replacement if something happens during transit.
So it's like insurance for the stuff you're delivering.
Exactly. While Roadie does offer some basic cargo coverage, it might not be enough in every situation. The guide recommends checking the details and considering getting additional coverage if you regularly handle high-value items.
That's a smart move.
Yeah.
You know, this whole insurance conversation highlights the importance of being informed and proactive.
Yeah.
You can't just assume that you're covered. You have to do your research and make sure you have the right insurance in place to protect yourself and your business.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to protecting yourself and your livelihood.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that can really elevate your experience as a roadie driver. Building relationships with senders. I know it might seem counterintuitive in the gig economy where everything is so transactional, but building those connections can make a huge difference.
You're absolutely right. Cultivating strong relationships with senders can lead to repeat business, better tips, and even just a more enjoyable work experience. It's about turning those one-off interactions into something more meaningful.
So how do you go about building those relationships?
It starts with the basics: punctuality, clear communication, handling items with care. Those things demonstrate respect and professionalism and go a long way in building trust.
It's about showing that you're not just another faceless driver, you're someone who takes pride in their work and values their customers.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to go above and beyond. If you can do something extra to make the sender's life easier, like helping them load a heavy item or placing the package in a specific location, it shows you care.
It's those little touches that people remember. Kind of like when you get exceptional service at a restaurant or store, you're more likely to go back.
Precisely. And communication is key. Respond to messages, promptly keep senders updated on your ETA, and be transparent about any delays or issues.
Open and honest communication builds trust and fosters a more positive experience for everyone involved.
And don't underestimate the power of personalization. Remember, details about past gigs or interactions, use the sender's name, make them feel like more than just a transaction.
Little things can make a big difference. We talked earlier about specialization.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear more about what that looks like in the real world. What are some examples of areas where roadie drivers might choose to specialize?
Specialization is a great way to differentiate yourself in the roadie marketplace, command higher rates, and really hone your skills in a particular area. It's about finding your niche and becoming the go-to person for certain types of gigs.
So instead of being a jack of all trades, you become a master of one.
Exactly. And the areas of specialization are as diverse as the gigs on roadie itself. If you have a truck and are comfortable with larger items, you could specialize in furniture or appliance deliveries.
Makes sense. What about things like airport runs or medical deliveries?
Those are excellent examples of niche areas. If you're near an airport and you're organized and efficient, airport gigs can be very lucrative. And if you're detail-oriented and reliable, you can focus on prescription deliveries, which require extra care and attention.
So there's really no limit to the areas where you can specialize.
Yeah.
It's all about finding what you enjoy, what you're good at, and what's in demand in your area.
Exactly. And specialization doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing proposition. You can start by dipping your toes into a particular niche and see how it goes.
Test the waters, see if it's a good fit,
Yeah,
and adjust your approach as needed.
exactly. The beauty of the gig economy is that it allows for that kind of flexibility and experimentation.
We've talked a lot about the individual aspects of being a roadie driver.
Right.
But I want to step back for a moment and consider the bigger picture. The gig economy is often touted as a solution to the changing nature of work.
Yeah.
But it also has its critics.
Yeah.
What are some of the broader societal implications of this shift towards gig work, and where does roadie fit into that landscape?
That's a great question, and one that sparks a lot of debate. The gig economy is a complex and evolving phenomenon, and its impact on society is multifaceted. On the positive side, it has undoubtedly created new opportunities for people to earn income in ways that weren't possible before.
It's given people more control over their time, their work, and their income.
Exactly. And for many people, it's been a lifeline, especially during times of economic uncertainty.
It's a safety net for those who might not fit into traditional employment models.
Absolutely. But the gig economy isn't without its downsides. There are concerns about the lack of benefits like health insurance and paid time off that are typically associated with traditional jobs.
So it's a trade-off. You gain flexibility, but you lose some security.
Right. And there are also questions about whether some gig platforms are exploiting workers by misclassifying them as independent contractors to avoid paying benefits and minimum wage.
It's a legal and ethical gray area that's still being sorted out.
It is, and it's an important conversation to have as the gig economy continues to grow.
So where does roadie fit into all of this?
I think Roadie, while participating in the gig economy, does have some key differences from platforms like ride-sharing or food delivery. For one, Roadie focuses on pre-scheduled deliveries, often with specific time windows.
So it's not just about being on call 24/7, waiting for a ping.
Exactly. And roadie gigs often involve longer distances and higher value items, which typically means higher payouts per gig.
It's not just about those quick, low-paying deliveries.
Right. And I think it's also worth noting that Roadie has made efforts to address some of the concerns around worker classification and benefits. They offer supplemental accident insurance to their drivers, and they've publicly supported legislation that would give gig workers more protections.
So they're acknowledging the need for a more equitable and sustainable model for the gig economy.
Exactly. They're not perfect, but they seem to be trying to do the right thing.
And that's what we want to see, a gig economy that works for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
We've talked a lot about the practicalities, the strategies, and the economics of being a roadie driver.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to address the human side of this work,
Yeah.
particularly the emotional and mental well-being of gig workers.
Yeah.
What are some of the unique challenges that people in this line of work face, and how can they take care of themselves?
That's an important point. The gig economy can be rewarding, but it also comes with its own set of stressors that can impact mental and emotional health.
It's not all sunshine and roses.
Definitely not. One of the biggest challenges is the inherent unpredictability of gig work. Income can fluctuate, gigs can be scarce, and that uncertainty can take a toll on your mental state.
It's that feast or famine cycle that can be hard to manage emotionally.
Right. And then there's the isolation that many gig workers experience. You're often working independently without the camaraderie and support of colleagues in a traditional work setting.
They can get lonely out there on the road.
It can. And then there's the pressure to always be on, to be available for gigs, to constantly hustle for the next opportunity. It can be difficult to switch off and recharge.
It's like the work never truly ends.
Exactly. And all of these factors can contribute to stress, anxiety, burnout, even depression. So it's crucial for gig workers to be proactive about their mental and emotional health.
So what can gig workers do to take care of themselves?
One of the most important things is to set boundaries. Create a clear separation between work time and personal time.
Easier said than done when your office is your car.
It is, but it's crucial to carve out those mental and physical spaces where you can disconnect from work and recharge.
So no checking the Roadie app while you're having dinner with your family.
Exactly. Another thing that can help is connecting with other gig workers.
Okay.
Sharing experiences, offering support and advice. It's like creating a virtual water cooler.
It's about building a community and finding support in a work environment that can often feel isolating.
Absolutely. And of course, never hesitate to seek professional help if you're struggling. Therapists and counselors can provide valuable support and guidance in navigating the unique challenges of gig work.
Mental health is just as important as physical health, and there's no shame in asking for help.
And finally, don't underestimate the importance of self-care. Make time for activities that bring you joy, whether it's exercise, spending time in nature, pursuing a hobby, or simply relaxing and recharging.
Fill your cup so you can pour from it.
Exactly. By prioritizing their mental and emotional well-being, gig workers can create a more sustainable and fulfilling work experience.
So we've talked about the nuts and bolts of being a roadie driver.
Yeah.
The strategies, the logistics, the risks, the rewards.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that there's a human element to all of this.
Absolutely.
These aren't just gigs. These are interactions with real people. And the way we approach this work can have a real impact on our own well-being and the well-being of others.
I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, it's about finding a balance, working smart, taking care of ourselves, and remembering that we're all part of something bigger.
Okay, so you're ready to hit the road and start your roadie journey. What are some final pieces of advice that we can leave our listeners with?
Okay.
Those golden nuggets of wisdom that will help them succeed.
I think the most important thing is to go into this with a positive attitude and a willingness to learn and adapt. The gig economy is constantly evolving, and the most successful drivers are the ones who embrace that change and constantly seek ways to improve.
It's about being a lifelong learner, always striving to get better at your craft.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Whether it's reaching out to Roadie support, connecting with other drivers, or even consulting with a tax professional, don't hesitate to seek guidance when you need it.
There's a wealth of knowledge and support out there, so tap into those resources and never stop learning.
And finally, remember that you're not just delivering packages, you're connecting people and businesses, facilitating commerce, and being part of something bigger than yourself.
That's a great way to think about it. It's about seeing the value in what you do and the positive impact you can have on the world around you.
Exactly. So get out there, hit the road, and make those deliveries with a smile on your face and a sense of purpose in your heart.
And that concludes our deep dive into the world of Roadie. We hope you found these insights valuable and that you're feeling inspired to hit the road and start hustling. Remember, knowledge is power, and with the right tools and strategies, you can create a successful and fulfilling career in the gig economy.
Happy hustling.
You know, it's funny when you think about it, roadie drivers are kind of like modern-day pioneers.
Oh, how so?
They're out there exploring these new routes, connecting communities,
Right.
and playing a vital role in the economy.
That's a great analogy. And just like those early pioneers, they're facing challenges, adapting to new landscapes and forging their own paths.
And they're doing it with a sense of independence and a spirit of adventure. There's something really inspiring about that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes Roadie and the gig economy as a whole so fascinating. It's a reflection of our changing world, and it represents this new way of working and living that's full of possibilities.
So for those who are ready to embrace the challenges and rewards of this new frontier,
Yeah.
Roadie is waiting. Get out there, hit the road, and make those deliveries.
And remember, we're here to support you every stick of the way. Happy hustling.
Okay, so that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Roadie. We hope you found this journey insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
I hope so.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the practical tips for getting started and maximizing your earnings to the broader societal implications of the gig economy.
It's a big topic.
It is. And we've explored the importance of safety, staying informed, and building relationships, not just with senders, but with other drivers and with yourself.
It's all connected.
It is ultimately, Roadie, like any gig platform, is what you make of it. It's a tool, a platform, an opportunity, but it's up to you to use it wisely, to leverage its potential, and to create a work experience that is both rewarding and sustainable.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as you embark on your Roadie adventure, remember to be prepared, be strategic, be safe, and most importantly, be yourself.
And never stop learning, growing, and exploring the possibilities.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And
until next time, happy hustling.